Hi, this is Stephen Mead, lifelong entrepreneur, business owner, and global speaker. Over the years, I've read hundreds of books and spent thousands of hours developing what I call the bullseye belief system. And I've used that system to develop my own companies, as well as help others learn to be specific, targeted, and focused to get exactly what they want in life. Again, I'm Stephen Mead, and this is the Bullseye Guy podcast. Stephen Mead again, back for another Bullseye Guy podcast. As you can tell, we are still on Corona lockdown. I'm calling it Corona quiet. It's like the quiet period right now. And what do we do to that quiet period? We try and get better. I'm not going to talk about getting better. I'm going to talk about getting worse. And this is going to be a somber, sobering, frustrating podcast. And I apologize for that in advance. But I'm going to talk about a system we built and created called EAMS, the Emergency Asset Management System. And before I go into that, it's basically what's going on right now where we're early April, Corona crisis is still going on. Governments are scrambling, trying to solve the problem. And there's a myriad of issues. There's a myriad of problems. And we built something that can help. And it's a frustrating circumstance to watch what's going on a daily basis. So I'm going to talk a little bit not about what we built in a self-serving way. I'm going to talk about the state of disaster management and crisis management and how these things really work and operate and why we're still failing today with a government that is historically reactive. They're not proactive, they're reactive. A disaster happens and they want to fix stuff and their government sucks. Now, again, I don't mean that bad. They're trying to do their best. They're not just set up for true crisis. What do I mean by that? Let's back up. 2001, going a long way back, there was a tragedy. Many of you, if you're old enough, remember it. It was 9/11, September 11th. Towers came down, a tragedy in every sense of the word. It happened on a Tuesday. Thursday, I was sitting around in Chicago, still in shock, with my business partner, a guy named Bob Jarametta, and I was reading articles about all of these physical assets, all of these things showing up at New York. And it was everything from equipment to donations to volunteers. And this article said, all of these things are showing up. There's no way to really know where it is, who's doing what, who owns things. And I turned to my partner, Bob, at the time, my business partner, and said, hey, I have an idea. We had built this enterprise software. And it's the same version, similar to Moneta Pro, the software we have now, the enterprise software that we're running in 2020. Enterprise level, blockchain, award winning. The functionality is very similar, more advanced, but similar back to then. And the system back then that we had built, original enterprise software, had two buttons that said buy and sell. And I went, well, wait a minute. I can change buttons and add a button that says donate and another button that says acquire. If you have something you want to donate, here, click a button, fill out a form, put it in. If you want to acquire, click acquire, search. I realized we had software and a solution that could solve the problem. Long and short, the moral of the story is we ended up donating the software into September 11th, worked through the Chamber of Commerce, had software in 2001. Fast forward, 2002, 3, 4, 5, Department of Homeland Security, everybody was still up in arms trying to solve a problem. But as the disaster wore down, right, unfortunately, disasters age. And therefore, the disaster management and crisis and ability and desire to solve a problem ages. It's just unfortunate. It's a fact. Over time, people became less concerned about true homeland security, true disaster management. The government doesn't want to pay for things in advance that they may or may not ever need. Why is that important? Fast forward to today. New York especially, Governor Cuomo's doing a good job. He's on every day. I think Gavin Newsom's doing an amazing job. I think Trump's doing a great job. Like, these guys are in the midst of trying to solve a problem. But let's look at the crux of the problem and the one that we attack and we're frustrated by. Cuomo on a daily basis talks about the need for more respirators, more this, more that, saying, hey, why can't people donate the assets? I want people to donate. Just give it to us. We'll give it back to you. There's massive problems with that. There's no way to track, no ability to get repaid, compensated. The government right now, as of April 8th, California and New York, again, I apologize for the rant, have a form. If you want to donate some to the state of California, you click a button and fill out a form. This is 2020. States are fixing things with a form. It is so frustrating. It's beyond comprehension of the incapability of government to do things the right way. Again, this may be a rant. I don't mind. I don't care. We've been in the middle of these things for years, decades now, and nothing gets fixed. Why is that important? Let's go to Trump. Love him or hate him, I don't care. I think Trump's doing a great job for what he needs to do in the government side. He's putting the right people in place. Yeah, he may talk in hyperboles, but he's got people who are trying to attack the problem. Less than a week ago, he announced a supply chain task force. Again, I'm getting into how to help solve a problem, not only today, but hopefully moving forward. States, cities, governments, and countries need what I'm talking about. And I'm not being self-serving. This is critical for saving people's lives. What do I mean by that? Trump announced a supply chain task force. Now all of a sudden they're saying, hey, we've got a problem. Within that problem, there are 4 key aspects, 4 key things they wanted to do. And the first one is pretty easy. We need more masks. We need more respirators. How do we buy things? We need more of this. And I get calls all the time. People are going, oh, Stephen, you know so many people. Help us with masks. Help us with ventilators. And I'm like, no way. I'm not getting involved in procurement. I'm not connecting to people. I'm not. Every Johnny come lately is out there who knows somebody that knows somebody that has access to masks in China. No, thank you. Leave that to the government professionals. And again, the last thing I want to do is be in the middle of some deal where I source masks and the masks come in and they're infected. Or I source ventilators and they come in broken. Or you source COVID-19 tests and they come in faulty. That is a daily basis. And everybody in their effort to help is trying to connect. Go for it. I hope people solve it. But that's one of the problems is procurement. Another one is, how do you buy things from your own suppliers? How do you get them here, in a way, faster and cheaper? So one of the other aspects is this thing called an air bridge. If you're trying to buy equipment from China, from an India, how do you get it here quicker than putting it on the water and moving it across? Fair enough. Then another aspect, and I don't even remember what the third one is, but number 4 is important. Number 4 says, hey, we're FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Association. We're the state of California. We're the state of New York. What do we own? Right? If you're the state of California, you should be able to look and say, we have X number of hospitals. We have X number of locations. What do we own that's idle? And FEMA talks about this in the supply chain initiative. It says, FEMA's got a problem. Problem 1 is they don't know where anything is. They don't know what's idle. They don't know what other people own and have that not owns, but is idle and available. And I'll come back to that. But 1 is, what do they own? 2, where is it located? And 3, who needs it? There's no visibility across organizations, public, private, state, municipality, nothing. And you're going to try and solve it with a form and a spreadsheet and a phone number. It's just maddening and frustrating. Idle assets. Here's what I mean by idle. This is the way the systems work. You can look in, if you're the state of California, you should have a list. It's called a tabletop exercise. It says, hey, we have a bunch of locations that have pumps. There's fires in Malibu, right? Because most disasters are local disasters. 96, 97% are local. State of California has all kinds of local disasters every year. Floods, fires, mudslides, fires in San Francisco, mudslides in Malibu. If you look on a sheet and say, hey, send me the spreadsheet of what you own, and Eagle, I'm going to pick on them, even though we're not in studio. Again, love the guys at Groove Radio downtown. If you look and say, hey, Eagle's got 50 pumps, call them, we need 10. Well, ownership is not idle. Ownership is not available. You can call Eagle, hey, we need 10 pumps in Malibu. He's going to go, well, I have 50, but they're all being used. Oh, who's next? How do you make something available that's actually idle? Ownership is irrelevant. If that location says, hey, I've got 50 pumps, here's 10 I don't want. The system we have is like an eBay interface. Click, add a product. Here's a picture, here's a price, here's a description. I've got 10 of them. Here's where they're located. Not here's a list, here's a spreadsheet. How do you find things that are idle? How do you distribute it to collect that data? Well, you can't do it with spreadsheets all coming in and trying to do it. It's, again, the frustration is going to be palpable on this podcast, and I apologize, but I'm watching this unfold in real time, and it is beyond maddening. What we've built, EAMS, the Emergency Asset Management System, again, spin-off of enterprise software. Basically, it creates hierarchies. What's a hierarchy? Here's who's in control. Here's the state of California. The state of California says, I'm going to authorize a division, and that division is UCLA Medical Center. And UCLA Medical Center says, I'm going to authorize departments. One of the departments is the floor that has respirators. Another department is the floor that has supplies for masks. Another department might be the guy that has pumps. Those assets are located at different levels within an organization. We have software that says, hey, authorize these guys. Who can put it in? And assign rights. Ours is all built on rights and authorities. It's not, I have something, here's a spreadsheet, come vet me. If you assign somebody in, can they buy an asset? Can they acquire it? Can they list an asset? Can they search? Are they authorized to add people underneath them? You need to control the aspect of who can do what inside a centralized e-commerce type database. It's built, not a spreadsheet, not a form, not a clickable link. Again, I keep going back. I apologize. I warned you in advance. This is going to be a different podcast. Again, hierarchy. Now for the state of California, who, to their credit, again, Gavin, great job. You just donated 500 respirators. And I don't know if he sent them to New York or sent them to New Orleans. Somebody needs them. But that asset has a value. When you loan it, it needs to be tracked. It needs to be accounted for, but first you need to know what's idle. So step one is, how do you solve what's idle? System we have, hierarchies, click a button, fill out a form, put it in, and add a price. And price is a critical component I'm going to talk about in a minute. But step two is, now, once your assets are in, again, this is FEMA saying this, not me. One is, where's what we own? Two is, how do we find it? Where's it located? And three, how do we acquire it? Step two, again, what we built is a built-in search engine. If you're a hospital group, you're UCLA in California, and you say, hey, I've got 500 respirators and 40 cases of masks. Who wants them? Over here on the other side, again, within the hierarchy, is the state of New York. And here's the state of New York, who authorized 2 different hospitals. One of the big hospitals needs more assets than the little hospital. And this hospital is authorized to acquire the assets. That manager can now go in now, hey, I need respirators. Well, within a built-in search engine that's based on location of where the asset is, now all of a sudden an asset manager in New York, just like you're searching for computers on Amazon or computers, the difference with what we've built is you can sort by not only geography, you can sort by zip code, you can look at assets. So a manager in New York says, hey, I need respirators. State of California has got 500 of them. Great. If we could get them, it'll take us 3 days to get them across country. Well, hey, look at this. Virginia's got 50, and I could have them in 5 hours from Virginia. Visibility, the ability to acquire, the ability to search. How do you find assets? How do you make critical decisions of what's available? That's what's going on. and the government's not well positioned to handle it. What we've built allows a lot of that. Now, as I delve in a little deeper, there's public partnerships, private partnerships. If you've got, Caterpillar wants to donate equipment because you may have to have the Army Corps of Engineers building something, right? Or you might have Home Depot who's willing to donate plywood into buildings. How do you get private public partnerships in company? We've built it. You can authorize in Home Depot. Home Depot can authorize locations. Each location can list what they have available. To watch the government flail and sit there, we've got press conference releases from Cuomo begging people to donate things. And when you go to the New York site, click, it says, hey, here's the things we really want, but we'll call you. Or, hey, here, fill out this form. We'll have somebody call you. It's maddening. And even past there, I'm going to talk for a minute about volunteers. Why do I know this? We've been through these disasters. We've watched it. With September 11th, we were there for years managing this. We got called after Katrina, after the fact, on a hurricane. We got called after Haiti. The government always wants to institute stuff after the fact. Here's what happens with a disaster. This happened in Katrina. It's happening now with COVID. Katrina was beyond frustrating. We were on the phone. I won't mention names because it's big consultants, governors. And basically, they were saying, oh, well, what do you have, Stephen, that you've built? I'm like, we have software. Here's what it does. We'll give it to you. Just, there's some training involved. Well, it handles donations. And the consulting firm, the smart guys, said, oh, we've got this under control. We've got donations handled. And I was like, great, how? We're going to encourage everybody to just send cash. Just again, I don't mean to pick on Cuomo. He's at the front of the spear. But their website just came out and said, oh, if you want to volunteer, click here. If you want to donate cash, click here. And if you want to donate assets, click here. He at least separated it out. The bozos I was dealing with after Katrina, we're just going to donate cash. I told him, I said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have people who want to help. Whether this is a flood, a tornado, or a COVID crisis, the activities are the same. The scale is different. After Katrina, I said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have people around the world who want to help, especially churches. Churches are great in the community. You're going to have a church drive from Mississippi, and a church pastor is going to fill a whole trailer load full of stuff. I won't call it crap because it's good intentions, but they're going to show up with a semi-trailer full of coffee, cookies, blankets, diapers, like whatever people put in that you might need. And at the disaster, it's all going to show up at once. You're not going to know if you need it. You're not going to have any place to store it. You're not going to warehouse it. You're not going to know if it's infected or not, but you can't turn them away because that pastor and that truck's going to be standing there. If you say, oh, we don't want your donations, the press is right there to hammer you. The press is there to make you look bad. Oh, look at all these donations you don't want. It is a failed system. I told the guys this, Katrina, I said, you're going to end up with a line of people outside somewhere. It ended up being the Superdome. And you're going to have a box. And in that box, you're going to have cookies and diapers. And you're going to give cookies to diabetics and diapers to people that don't have babies. Why? Because you don't have a system. You don't know who needs what. You just throw it in a box. Here, take it. Still going on today. Beyond maddening and frustrating. I know I keep saying that. What you need is a system that allows a donation, a volunteer. Right? Cuomo put a notice out and said, hey, we need volunteers. He had 20,000 people. Volunteer. You don't need 20,000 people on day one. Right? If you have 500 ambulances, you don't need 5,000 EMT ambulance drivers showing up in New York when you only have a certain number. You don't need 5,000 respiratory therapists when you only have 1,000 respiratory machines. You need 5,000 people in a system saying, hey, here I am. I'm available. Here's my picture. Here's my medical ID. If I show up and you need me, you can vet my picture to my ID. Make sure I'm legitimate. Here's the hours I have available. Here's where I'm located. And here's how much I'd like to get compensated. You want people posting into a system what's idle, what's available. And then you want the acquisition teams to be able to acquire those things if and when needed. Again, we've built it. We have a system. We have a cool little button that says publish, yes or no. What does publish mean? Publish means, hey, I'm a volunteer. I'm available. I'm going to publish myself in the system. Here's my picture. Here's my hours. But now all of a sudden, I may get called to my own crisis. I can go into the system and say publish no. It pulls my information out. It retains it. If I'm available again, I simply publish in or out. You can't do that on a spreadsheet. You can't do that on 20,000 people showing up all at once. You can't pull yourself in and out. Same thing with assets. I might have 10 pumps right now or 50 respirators. But if it changes, I need to be able to go click one button, change my quantity from 50 to 30. You need a real-time visibility asset management system with hierarchies and controls. It's built. And governments to this day are still solving things on a spreadsheet and a form. Frustrating. Another component. Again, we learned all this. We've been in this space. I was not going to get involved in COVID. I get calls all the time. Again, it was all around securing procurement supplies. No, thank you. The president announced a task force, and day after day, I've watched Cuomo on TV talking about how they need products, how they need assets, how they need donations. One of the press conferences, he's begging people to donate things. And one of the people in the press said, well, Mr. Cuomo, isn't that illegal? Won't you get sued? And Governor Cuomo, you got to love Cuomo's response to this. If it had been Trump, the press would have been all over him. Again, I don't pick sides. I like politics. It's interesting. Cuomo's like, if I get sued 5 times a day, that's a good day for me. Because if somebody wants to sue me for trying to save lives, bring it on. But that wasn't the problem. The underlying tenet is the following. If I'm in California and I, quote, donate 500 ventilators, I need to know, hey, here's 500 ventilators. Let's say it's UCLA that owns them. I'm going to make it simple. UCLA owns 500 ventilators. Those ventilators are expensive. That asset is owned by UCLA. It's on a fixed asset module. They are responsible for it. If they get audited and those ventilators are gone, that's theft. Somebody is responsible for that asset. But oh, it's COVID. Let's send them to New York. Who did you send them to? Who acquired them? What location? Do you have a record? Is it trackable? Do you know who acquired it so you can at least when the disaster crisis over, say, hey, I want this thing back. In the crux of a disaster, we just want to help. I talked to somebody the other day, an EMT, emergency management technician, said, oh yeah, our company was great. We sent 23 ambulances to New York. I said, to who? He goes, well, I don't know. We sent them to New York. I said, great. How are you going to get them back? What are you going to do when it's over? And he looked at me and said, well, I don't know. We just knew they needed them. You need trackability. You need the ability to say, here's a history of who acquired that asset. So when the disaster's over, you can get that asset back. UCLA is responsible. Now, if New York acquired it and they say, hey, we've got them over here, can we buy them? We don't want to ship them back. That's fine, but you at least have a thread, a track. We have that capability in blockchain with the IBM component. Then we have something really unique. And again, I'm going into depth. Some people will watch this and go, why is he rambling? Some people will watch it after the fact and go, wow, he was right. Hopefully some government people will watch it and say, we need this now. We're working with some amazing people to possibly get this implemented in some states so this won't keep happening. But what we've built is very, very unique. The MonetaPro platform, again, behind me, MonetaPro, is built for what's called corporate barter. Corporate barter says if I sell an asset, I earn barter credits. We call it a GBUC, a general business usage credit. It's just a credit. It's like a store credit. And then I can use that credit to go buy some other asset. How does that work for disaster management? Really simple. If I'm the state of California and I, quote, donate my ventilators to California, or if I'm the state of California, or donate them to New York, if I'm California, UCLA, and I donate them to San Diego, that asset has a value. If it's just a state asset loaning to a state entity, you're technically supposed to keep track of that value. So as an example, and I don't know the value of ventilators, but let's say the ventilator is $1,000 a day. Now, you're not charging New York, you're not charging San Diego, but the value of $1,000 a day, you want to keep a record of that, because if that disaster, if that crisis rolls up and becomes a state disaster, there's dollars available for reimbursement. If it's a federal disaster, a FEMA level, you're sending it to New York, there's federal dollars for reimbursements. Not during the time, not during the fact. You're not trying to send them a purchase, or we've built a system off of these credits. We'll call them crisis credits, where now UCLA can list an asset and say, hey, we've got 500 ventilators. They're $1,000 a day. If you want them, take them. And over here in New York, you can assign $1 million of crisis credits to the hospital in New York. That New York hospital now has $1 million of crisis credits. Well, what do they need? They may assign crisis credits down to the respiratory department to go acquire the respirators. They'll assign crisis credits down to the other department that needs supplies and another department that needs masks. These credits become a trackable component. It allows you to maintain discipline. It allows you to control hoarding, right? The big hospital in New York's crisis credits might be $1 million. The little hospital in Poughkeepsie might be $100,000. If you just said, hey, here's 2 hospitals, we have 500 respirators, who wants them, who needs them? The bigger cities and states are outbidding each other. In our model, in our system, you can assign credits down to validate, to fairness, to balance out, to control hoarding. Now, the hospital over here acquires the asset. A blockchain record is written, so you've got a thread of accountability and audit trail. You've got a report for repurposing back to the place. And you've got a credit that returns to UCLA, where the UCLA department says, hey, here's our 500 respirators, here's our credits. Those credits now become the trackable audit trail for state or federal reimbursement. You can't do this on a spreadsheet. The world is collapsing right now, but people want to help. There's assets all around the world. We used to call this a waterfall effect. Cuomo's calling it a wave effect. Some people are calling it a surge. I don't like surge because that was sort of a military term, but the wave says in New York right now, New York's got problems. New York is the front edge, tip of the spear. They need a lot of equipment. But when you watch Cuomo, he's like, hey, send us your equipment. When we're done and we don't need any more, hopefully, we'll send it back to you. Or if you need it before then, we'll send it back anyway because it's yours. But hopefully, if we get this under control, the next hotspot might be New Orleans. The next hotspot might be Michigan or Wisconsin or California. And those assets can then be reallocated and redeployed. The worst thing that happens is the respirator from California makes it to New York, and then the guy in New York says, oh, now they need it in New Orleans, and now that asset's in New Orleans, and after the fact, UCLA has a multi-million-dollar audit problem when they were just trying to do the right thing. That's all we're trying to do. EAMS is the Emergency Asset Management System. It solves problems. 97% of the crises are on a state level, local. States need their own asset program to redeploy things they already own. They need to be more efficient. Finding an asset you already own is faster than buying a new one. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, and it's also safer. We want to help. I want to help save lives and save the world. This is a frustration, if you can tell, because we've been down this route before with the government. We've been down watching after the fact, reactionary, everybody's trying to solve the problem. And the problem is it needs to be solved in advance. Emergency Asset Management System, deployable, scalable, launches on Amazon, up and operational in 24 to 48 hours, and could start saving lives immediately. I appreciate you letting me rant. This is the typical Steve and me Bullseye Guy podcast, but a little depth, a little history of stuff we've done before. Hopefully we'll get through this crisis, the COVID crisis. Again, my saying is, don't be scared, but be prepared. I think that's a good way to close. I want the states to be prepared for the next disaster, whether it's a fire, a flood, or a famine. I don't care. I want to be prepared, and I want them to be prepared too. Again, Steve and me, the Bullseye Guy podcast. Thank you so much. Tune in next week. We have a great show coming up with Jeffrey Hazlett, the former CMO of Kodak, talking about 5 things you can do during the coronavirus shutdown. Again, Steve and me, the Bullseye Guy podcast. Thank you so much.